Hello and welcome everyone to this Smart Grid News webinar. I'm Jesse Berst. I'm your host and your moderator today. I'm the founder and chief analyst at SmartGridNews.com. We're the Smart Grid specialists. We're the Internet's oldest and largest Smart Grid site, and we're about a month away from celebrating our 10th anniversary. This is going to be a real fun and fast-paced webinar because we're going to look under the hood of one of the country's most ambitious and most successful smart grid deployments. So you're going to find out the approaches they took. You're going to find out the lessons they learned. And here's the crew for today. I'll introduce them in more detail when it's their turn to talk, but please say hello to Ed Rossi from IBM. Welcome, Ed.
Hi, Jesse. Thank you.
And to Joel Webb from Oklahoma Gas and Electric. Joel, thanks for coming by.
Thanks, Jesse. It's great to be here.
All right. So here's a lineup of what we're going to cover. I warned you that you're going to be drinking from a fire hose, and you can see what I'm talking about. So we're going to get an overview of intelligent network management and some examples of 3 other utilities who are using this approach. Then we're going to go under the hood at OG&E, talk about the requirements, their reference architecture, their energy information website they put up for their customers, their demand response program, their meter data management system, several of their other important systems, their data warehouse, their development process. More importantly, I think it's really about lessons learned. I'm going to cover all of that today, and now you can see why we may have to run a little bit long. So let's get started with Ed Rossi. He's the Senior Product Management Strategy Leader for Smarter Infrastructure at IBM. He drives IBM's Smarter Infrastructure Strategy. He's got more than 11 years of experience. He's got an economics degree from Virginia Polytechnic Institute. So, Ed, thanks for coming by, and over to you.
Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate the opportunity to touch base here. I'm going to be fairly brief today. I want to just give a quick sense of some of the perspective that we at IBM have when we look at the tremendous complexity that's involved with energy and utilities and the networks and devices associated with them. And then I'll get out of the way and let Joel give you guys some much more detail about his specific implementation. Looking at IBM, it's our perspective, and this is true broadly speaking, and you may be familiar with some of our Smarter Planet concept that you see on our commercials. That really translates fairly directly into this type of conversation. When we look at the E&U environment, we see a significant instrumentation occurring. We have smart devices, meters, mobile devices, appliances, etc., that are appearing and that are able to collect and gather tremendous amount of data. And that kind of data is extremely useful if managed and applied. And that's really what we look at. The entire environment is becoming much more interconnected. There are significant physical networks as well as virtual connections that are occurring that are enabling the connectivity, communication between all of these different devices up to a central repository where this data can then be analyzed. And when we analyze it, we gain an understanding of the kinds of events that are occurring. We can drill down and look specifically at certain kinds of events that are of interest to us and really enable ourselves to perform actions against those events. And that gets us to our intelligence, our ability to look at those events from a geographic perspective, visually, to be able to decide what of those events and what elements need to be addressed, and then to actually perform the work process to go ahead and address them. We deal with analytics, understanding kind of the bigger picture look at the way that these events are occurring, making some decisions in terms of future implementation, deployment, etc. And we give the information back to our clients, to our end users, which could be households, executives, and anywhere in between. We want to provide that information to them. So that's a kind of a high-level look at the elements that we think of when we deal with energy and utilities. So this is kind of a quick look at the many areas that IBM deals with our solutions. Starting on the right, we have offerings that focus on generation performance improvement for plants and fleets. We look at customer operations and management systems. And we certainly look at the utility network, including grid operations, security, asset lifecycle management. Our focus today is on smart metering and communications. But I wanted to give you a sense that this is really part of a bigger picture. And we look at the entire span of the various elements that make up the E&U environment and have offerings and capabilities associated with those. As you see here, kind of highlighted in green, with smart metering and communication, we have a solution called IBM Intelligent Metering Network Management. So this is a solution that we have that does a series of things. It captures real-time availability and assurance data from those devices that we spoke about. It consolidates the events and alarms, and it correlates those events to various management policies. It pulls in additional data so that you have a bit more information about the event and how that event is relevant to your overall environment. We are able to perform network discovery and topology visualization, essentially being able to map out the network and, as importantly, the relationships of the various endpoints and middle points in that network, so that we understand when something goes down, what is impacted. Finally, we manage and configure changes to those remote devices using another element of the IM&M solution. And we bring all of that together in a kind of a visual look so that we can have an understanding, a clear understanding of all of the elements that we have within the network and the activity and events that are going on. And this kind of information is something that we feel is critical on the day-to-day management, and Joel will be providing some kind of more detailed examples as we go forward here. So I just want to briefly talk before we get to Joel about a couple of other clients that we have and some of the successes that they've had. CenterPoint Energy, one of the largest electric and natural gas energy companies in the U.S. with a large asset portfolio, electric transmission, distribution, natural gas, et cetera. And they were dealing with new sets of AMS rules published by the Texas Public Utility Commission, as well as rising customer expectations and intolerance of outages, a common scenario, and needed really a creative solution. They utilized IBM's professional services and elements of the Intelligent Meter Networking Management solution to create an AMS solution that really satisfied both their regulatory requirements and also helps to track the health of deployed smart meters using real-time reporting and visualization. So this was a real success for them, and at the end of the day allowed them to reduce the number of times that trucks were required to go out to sites. They were able to get enough data and understanding of their environment, and in some cases address the problem remotely, and in other cases understand the relative priority of that problem and manage those priorities appropriately. Another example is an Italian power company. And as you see here, they're monitoring over 260,000 meters and instruments. It's a large grid, and those meters are focused on in-home smart meters, sensors. They report outages, they pinpoint problems, and really the system as implemented allows them to automatically dispatch field operators to fix the problem, in many cases even before the customers realize that they have a problem, or at least have reported that problem. So another example of the way that we're able to use the smart metering and grid network to provide real value directly to this utilities and customers. And finally, we have a Brazilian utility that serves a large metropolitan area. They have interconnected systems of intelligent devices that sense and monitor and respond indicators, and enables them to manage and monitor the status of their electric distribution network and improve service delivery to their customers. And they use several of our products. NetCool is one of the key elements of the IM&M solution, and do event and network management across that environment.
We are listening to a SmartGridNews webinar under the hood of OG&E Smart Grid Deployment. We just heard from Ed Rossi of IBM. We've got several questions already, and a couple of related questions. One is, how does this offering work with IBM's Maximo products? And another person asks how it works with non-IBM products. What is your interoperability story?
Sure, absolutely. And that's very similar. The Maximo products, which are the kind of the asset and work management layer, really interact right on top of the solution that we're talking about here. We can accept the event management and data that comes to us and use that to create work orders and then manage those work orders through to completion to update and then to resolve the issues. So Maximo is a terrific complement to this overall solution. In terms of third-party tools, it's a good question. We work with a number of third-party products. We have integrations with Itron, with Trilliant from a meter vendor perspective. And we work with and are able to work with other tools, other GIS tools, for example, like Telvent, and bring that data in seamlessly and push it out. So that's a very common scenario for us in the implementations that we have.
So Ed, you showed a slide where with utility partners of yours in Brazil and Italy and the nation state of Texas, and you work with lots of utilities, but there's a question of how listeners could interact with other utilities to learn more about how they're doing things and get their lessons learned.
Yeah, that's a good question. Really the best way, and this is an opportunity to do it face-to-face, is to consider attending our Pulse conference in March of 2013. We have it every year. We bring a number of utility clients from around the world. We had, I forget the numbers, certainly over 6,000 attendees last year, the vast majority of which were certainly Maximo Enterprise Asset Management and overall utility clients.
Denise asks, and you touched on this, Ed, when you talked about Brazil a little bit, but she asked if there's examples of how this kind of a setup would help with catastrophic situations such as Superstorm Sandy.
Yeah, that's a good question. Boy, we've got a great example of that this week. What we have is real-time ability to gather data from the meters and understand what kind of data is coming in. So a typical example is that the meter ceases to report back, and the kind of event can be escalated, and events like that can be grouped. So if a number of events of a similar nature occur in a specific kind of geography or time and space, that information can be captured. So while there's some of the infrastructure damage that occurred in Sandy or something that are pretty hard to get around, early warning and understanding of the areas that are down are something that we can provide as long as we can bring it together.
Brian wants to know if you can integrate with role-based security.
We have some capability around role-based security, and we can integrate with some of those kinds of tools. The focus here, I think, is on functionality, and we can make the screens work toward the roles that the person is associated with.
Okay, thank you.